Hey guys, Kinggath here with the Kinggath podcast. Today's guest is the creator of one of the coolest pieces of software for mod players that we have ever seen, and that is Wabbajack. Welcome, Halgari. Halgari? How do we say that?
Halgari's fine, yeah.
It's funny, I always do a little pre-talk with everybody, and I never remember to ask how to pronounce their username.
Oh, that's quite all right. No, it's fine. It's a name I came up with years ago when I don't remember what it was. Guild Wars or EVE Online or something, and I just never switched away from it. So
I think that's a lot of us. We've just
doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Right. A lot of us just have like my name now. I've changed it since, but my original name when I started was just something I created like at my first time logging online, which back in the day we had no idea where the internet was going to go. So or that this name was going to follow us for decades. It was just like didn't matter at the time. Now I think all the new generation just use their real name. They're just like no separation between social media and their real lives whatsoever.
Yeah, that's actually I've had people caution me about that. My name's Tim Baldridge in real life because I'm a programmer. Is my day job, and so there are plenty of videos of me out there, and that's why I tell people. They're like, "Are you sure you want your real name?" I'm like, "Dude, that sailed years ago."
Right.
So
it won't be long before there's some like black site where you can go and just search up somebody's online username, and they put together a profile of all the leaked information that's been dropped out there on the internet.
It's Google for me. So
right. So the program you created, apologies, I'm taking off a jacket. It's got kind of warm in here. Wabbajack. I've never actually said that aloud. Such an amazing program because it does a couple of things. First off, it eliminates a lot of people's attempts recently to try and turn this into a moneymaker, because that's been one thing that this has been attempted multiple times now to create mod packs. But it also does it in probably the simplest way possible. Like when I saw the people talk about Wabbajack, I'm like, there's no way this isn't going to be a wonky mod tool that's going to take a lot more steps than advertised. But instead, somebody literally sent me a copy of Wabbajack and their mod list, and it was like a few clicks. Like there was like no effort whatsoever. I was shocked by how good this was as a user experience. Like not necessarily, I know you joked about me in private messages that you thought there was a lot more work to do in the UI. But I'm just talking about the user experience as a whole of like, it was just so easy to get up and running. And it was like dream come true territory for playing with mods, because it has gotten to be a pain in the ass to play with mods these days if you want to play with a lot of them. Oh, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And so we can probably start with that and kind of explain what Wabbajack does. So in a lot of ways, it's not even a mod pack system. It's more of an automated mod list installer. It's kind of what we like to refer to it as, because especially in this community, mod packs have a connotation with like, hey, there's stuff out there where you can go and torrent, like 60 gigabytes of mods all packaged together or whatever, and it never quite works. But the problem with that obviously is you're taking other people's work and copying it, and it's copyright violation. So what Wabbajack does instead is that given a mod organizer install, mod organizer 2, all the mods you have set up, it just finds a way to create an exact copy of that on another machine without actually transferring the files. So it can look at your download directory and say, hey, this file came from this archive, and that archive is marked in mod organizer is coming from this page on Nexus. And so we now know we need to download that archive and extract the specific file and put it in this location. And it does that for all, 150,000 files that Skyrim or Fallout install.
Yeah. And it does. The fact that it grabs all the little settings and tweaks and stuff is freaking insane, because that's one of the things where it can really get hung up, and where we were talking about, if you download these backwoods mod packs, is that that part of it isn't done, or the going through the faux mod installer, you still have to do that, which is something when I read about the way Nexus is looking to approach their mod packs, that's a red flag to me of like, there's a lot of nuance that's lost in doing it the way they want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can't take full credit for the way Wabbajack works in this area. And so a little background on this, it's kind of weird. About I should start even farther back. So
Okay.
I've been trying to build something like this for like 5 years. And way back in the day, there used to be this tool for Skyrim. It was like the Skyrim texture compiler or something. I don't even know what it did, but basically you could download all these mods and it would shove them together into like one BSA or something. But you still had to download the mods by them, individually.
Right.
So I wrote like a Python script or something like that would go and just scrape the Nexus site, and it was doing searches because this is before the API, the Nexus API. So it would just do web scraping and try to find the files and download them. And my script stopped working about halfway through because I hit the unpublished limit. Like their load balancer started to say, "Why are you, pulling up 3,000 pages?" And I kind of scrapped that because it was a horrible abuse of their servers.
Right.
But then when the so then with Ultimate Skyrim, they were looking at a way to automate installs. And so I don't even remember how I got in touch with the author of Automaton, whatever, the installer that Ultimate Skyrim used. And at the time, it was the same sort of thing. You had to manually download the files. And that's when I kind of said, hey, there is a way to automate this. We would use screen scraping or, page scraping, which is kind of a iffy area, but it is possible.
Yeah.
And about that exact time, like the next week, the Nexus comes out with their API and they're like, here's a way of accessing this. And I think that's actually tied into Mater's work. He had, what was it called? It's Mod Picker? Is that what it's called? Is that the site that he maintains?
I can't remember. I was just looking at it the other day because I was looking through his resources because he's got a program called ZEdit, which I'm very, very excited about. So
it was Mod Picker. So he had a thing that could download files, and it would use the same sort of thing. And from what I understand from hearing the stories of it, it worked the same sort of way, screen scraping, and the Nexus was like, could you not? And let's make an API.
Right.
Let's actually publish this. So once that happened, that was great. But the problem still was, even back then with Automaton, was that we didn't have a way of building the mod lists. And Methril, the author of Automaton, and I kind of were talking back and forth, and one of us at some point came up with the idea of, I think it was pretty much the same time. Yeah, well, you can compare the files in the archives with what's in the mod organizer folders.
Sure.
And then we actually extended that. So the way Wabbajack works is we do what's called content hashing. So there's algorithms you can run on a file that will create a unique thumbprint for a file.
Okay.
So we do that for every file in every archive in your downloads and every file in Mod Organizer. And then it's just a matter of matching up those thumbprints to find the files that match from one place to another.
Very cool.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. That gets it done.
Yeah, exactly.
And it creates this like pretty brilliant experience. Now, one of the things because I remember when Automaton came out, I think one of the big thing that caused a controversy over wasn't necessarily the software itself. It was it was probably going to be a great piece of software. I think the issue is that they paywalled through Patreon the actual mod list for Ultimate Skyrim. Is that accurate? Is that how it went down?
Yeah. I mean, so at the time, the beta was that way, and the plan is eventually that current version of Ultimate Skyrim would be paywalled, and then version -1 would be free, and that was I was never too happy with that. I didn't like that. There's been several requests to ask the author of Ultimate Skyrim to not do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
He's been open to that. But the problem really comes down to, this is an interesting philosophy too, and that is there are people out there who want to make a living doing modding.
Right.
And that's Belmont Boy is very open about that. That's what he wants to do with Ultimate Skyrim. And I just don't think it's practical.
Okay.
You do the math. Something like Ultimate Skyrim has 200 mods. Lexi's list for Skyrim Special Edition has like 600 mods, if you count a mod as a download, right? Like an individual thing created by an author. It's like 600 to 650. Do the math. Like, what do you think this settlements, or the mod you maintain, how much is that worth? I'd be like, well, I may pay $10-15. I've never played the mod, but $10-15 maybe sounds great. Well, spread that out across 600, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't afford $600 for a mod list, you know?
Right.
And so for me, it kind of comes down to one of those things of there's never going to be enough money for everybody to be able to make a living at it.
Sure.
And so we all just kind of set up Patreons instead and just leave it be.
Right. Support then you're supporting the individual in their efforts as opposed to the trying to sell the individual assets, which is especially tricky when you're talking about you're effectively selling things somebody else created.
Yeah, exactly. And with the mod list, it's like it's weird too, because you're not even really selling. You're kind of selling the collection of the metadata about how to install that. And a lot of these have a lot of, you know, conflict resolution patches. I mean, we have some lists. You know, Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition is a mod list installer. We have Augspeed as the author of that, and he's put a ton of work into that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, his input to that mod list is 1% of the total install. You know,
right.
One file out of 100 or whatever it is. So.
Right. Like it is a lot of work to, like, I agree. I mean, I think this is why we're excited about mod packs. It's a ton of work to get a good working mod order and get all the conflicts ironed out and make it so that you don't run into bugs in the middle of your playthrough. Because I think that is one of the most irritating things is you spend all this time setting up 250 mods. You go in, you play your character, you're fully immersed, and then you run into a character without skin or a purple guy or somebody with no weapons. And like all of that just pulls you right out of it. And it's like, crap, my mod list is garbage. And to fix all that and get prepared for that amazing playthrough takes a lot of effort. But it still pales in comparison to the number of hours total that went into designing all of those mods.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note too that there's like Wabbajack defaults on not installing a mod list if it can't do it flawlessly. And there's two areas where one of the tests I actually do is take a mod list, make a Wabbajack installer for it, install that mod list to my own machine, and then do a byte for byte compare of the two folders. Okay. And except for in two specific situations, they have to be 100% the same to pass that test. And so what you were saying is true. Like any system that doesn't work off this content hashing methodology where you find direct matches between files, anything that's like, well, we'll just download the latest unofficial patch and install it. No, that's not going to work because someone is going to update something and then it's going to change one record. We had that in Skyrim just recently. Skyrim update. And it broke everything because they finally fixed a nav mesh that they hadn't fixed before, and that caused a crash when combined with the unofficial patcher. And, all down the line, you know. And so the two cases where Wabbajack, where we accept a difference is the INI files. We actually remap the contents of INI files. So if there's an INI file that points to a specific directory on your machine and you make a mod list, it'll point to the correct place on my machine. So obviously that's cool. Not going to match.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other area is the BSA archives are compression is a weird thing. And
sure.
So, you know, the compression inside those files won't be byte for byte the same, but it can mean the same thing. Okay. So we have other tests around that to say, yeah, these are the same images. And actually Fallout is even worse. The BA2 format is, it's even weirder. Like there's when you put a texture into a BA2, there's information loss. Like what you get out of a BA2 file will not be the same thing that went in.
Really?
Essentially it will be as far as like the texture, but the metadata around the texture of like what all the header stuff and the DDS file and all that is different. It's a weird format, but
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of their file stuff is kind of weird. Like I've seen like the way they store information on dialogue for quests is absurd. For example,
yeah, but that's the cool thing with Wabbajack too, is that we started abstracting these concepts. So when I said before that we look inside every archive in your downloads folder, we look inside every archive and every archive in your downloads folder. And an archive for Wabbajack includes BSA and BA2 files. So if you take a BA2 from a mod and you extract it and you only want a couple files out of it, Wabbajack can detect that and say, this file came from inside that specific
Oh, wow.
BSA
Okay.
inside that zip. And it works the other way as well, where if you, in Skyrim, one of the things we have is the Skyrim Realistic Overhaul, which is like this giant texture pack, and people compress that into BSAs. So Wabbajack will detect that, yeah, the contents, we don't know where this BSA came from, but we know where all the contents of it came from.
Okay.
So we'll on the end user's machine create that BSA for them with the same setup as it had on the initial machine.
That's really fantastic. I mean, the software is very, very impressive, and it does exactly what it advertises. Now, I would want to bring up a point. So this is a contentious issue for a small group of people, which are a lot of mod authors who see this as a potential to lose them a lot of the credit, which is one of the few payments they get for doing this. And one of the reasons I think that is you made a point at the beginning of the podcast that I agree with on a technical level, that what you're doing is an automated installer. It's not technically a mod pack, but from the perspective of the end user and from the perspective of those mod authors who care about this, it's effectively the same thing. The player is removed from seeing the mod pages where they would go to download the pages. And this is one of the arguments I think that comes out against mods, and why you see there's a handful of people who have started pulling their stuff off of Nexus to get it out of the API. What do you want to do? Or I'm sure you've heard these arguments. Like, what is your response to them, and what kind of stuff do you think can be done to help alleviate that issue?
Yeah, so we currently do something that I think looks pretty nice, and that is in our installer while these mods are installing, and it can take, on a big install, depending on the speed of your system, it may be upwards of 1 or 2 hours that Wabbajack is working creating this mod list. We cycle through all the mods that we're currently installing and show a slideshow that says, we're currently installing this mod, and here's the author, and here's a short description. All the stuff you see on like the initial thumbnail of the Nexus page, right?
Sure.
And so that kind of gets the name out there too. And then we have links. So when you click the link, it takes you to the Nexus page. We also, with the installer, publish a manifest. So before you even get to installing the mod list, there's a button you can click that shows everything Wabbajack's about to do to your system. Like, we're going to download these archives. We're going to install, well, we don't list every file and where it goes, but we list the big things we're going to do. We're going to extract these files. We're going to, create these BSAs. And then there's links to all that as well. And that's, I think, a good middle ground. I wish there was more we can do, and I'm not really sure what the right answer is, because the counter argument is I've installed mod lists. I've been doing that since Skyrim Legendary Edition with Step, the Step guide, and I never read half the stuff, right? You click the link, you go to the page, you find the file, you download, you close the window, you go to the next one.
Right.
And I think there's an argument too to be made here that it was almost funny. We had someone who was quite well versed in modding sit down and convert the Lexi mod list to Wabbajack, like set it all up and work. Okay. And it took him like a week or two or 3 weeks, and
600
and when he finally gets through the whole thing, we start testing it and it's crashing, right? Because there's those 2 mods that he didn't quite install right. And that's a thing where I think people get frustrated with that. They install this thing, they go to RuinedWorld, they find some guy with a purple face, and then they go to whoever overhauled RuinedWorld, whoever that was, JK or Arthmore or whoever, and they're like, why did you screw up the faces of the NPCs? And you're always going to get that, people blaming the mod authors, but on the other hand, it's like, if we can have that perfect install, then maybe there'll be less of that.
Yeah, I would definitely hope in that regard. But so I would agree with the idea you just said about people installing mod lists, especially if you're getting into hundreds of mods. You're not going to take the time to even look at the name of the person. And I know that this is one of those ones where we could argue it rationally all we want. There are still some people who are going to reject this idea anyway. But I did look at one of the things I was looking at in preparation for this podcast, because I knew this was an issue I wanted to talk about, was when I was looking at the Nexus and how much information is displayed on, say, mobile or on a small screen on desktop. Is all I get to see on the initial screen, the way they have their site laid out, is I get to see this header image, the name of the mod. I can see the created by and uploaded, some screenshots, and then I get this little blurb that's about this mod. I don't see anything below, because I think one of the other one of the other arguments for getting people to the mod page is that that's your chance as a mod author to like give people warnings and say, hey, you know, you need to watch this video or whatever, and they miss it on that. But I was thinking, I can get to the download with Vortex button without ever seeing any of that. I don't have to see any of your description. I only have to see the little blurb that goes into the thing. So Nexus itself is kind of guilty of doing the same thing that people who are anti-mod pack for this reason are concerned about. And I don't know that I don't know that that the argument against them is strong enough to justify trying to train wreck or derail such a powerful system for players, because now, and the thing is that I think most of the people who are against it, if they separate themselves out from their own mods and they're concerned about in that regard, I think most of them would love this as players as well, just because we all know the frustration of getting a good mod load order installed. And this, I mean, Wabbajack, from what I've seen, has solved it all. And I'm sure you have some issues you're aware of where it can get polished and refined even further. But as far as what I've experienced so far, is it solves all of those issues.
Yeah, it does. And we're always looking for ways to improve that experience. You're right. But I think there's an entirely different group of people too that Wabbajack is targeted, and those are the people that just want to play the game. Like I've heard this too. It's like, I've heard people say, cool tool, I'll never use it because I like to have Skyrim set up the way I want it, or Fallout or whatever.
Sure.
Right? There's another class of people out there who just want to play something different than vanilla. And in fact, I can't tell you how many times I've watched some streamer on Twitch or something like that playing Skyrim, and after 5 minutes of watching them, you realize, wait a minute, this is vanilla with no mods at all. Maybe Sky UI, that's it, right? Just a little UI overhaul. And someone will ask in the comments, like, have you ever tried modding this more? And they're like, yeah, I just don't have the time. And it's like those people, hey, and a lot of times too, it's like it's maybe a one and done thing. They'll sit down. They would love to just sit down, play a heavily modded setup for 30, 40 hours, and then they'll walk away, and they may only do that once a year or something.
Right.
And it just doesn't make a lot of sense for them to spend 10 hours learning about all these tools and how to patch and all this sort of stuff. And at the end, they don't want to change in lifestyle, right? They just want to play a game,
Yeah. I think the potential for, and I've talked to this before, and people have heard me say it, is one of the things that I'm excited about with the mod packs is that there are so many mods that change the game so dramatically, both for Skyrim and Fallout, and for some of the older games, which I know Wabbajack has got support for some of the older titles, which we can talk about in a minute. But the potential to basically create new genres or new entire play styles out of these games is there if somebody were to take the time and curate properly. I would love to experience those, but hell, if I have the time to actually go do it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big thing. I don't know that I have the desire to sit down and make a hardcore modded, like the Ultimate Skyrims or Fallout 4E, these sort of things where it's like, you start off and you're starving, and it's like, I maybe will enjoy that for a little bit, but I'm not going to spend enough time that it'd be worth building that mod list on my own,
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's great. And I would love to see more of that come out. And, the other thing that we've noticed in the community too. So, Wabbajack's been around since July, so almost half a year, getting there. We've built up a nice large community on our Discord, really like 10,000 users on the Discord right now. Yeah, it's been insane. But we're starting to see like some new culture develop around this, and that's the sort of thing I'm really excited about. And I think it's we'll have to explain it this way. When you download mods from the Nexus, right? Let's say you there's one for Fallout 4. It's some sort of like workbench thing where it adds like a ton of new guns and stuff, and what's it called, like a
weaponsmith, AWKCR,
weaponsmith, yeah, that sort of thing. And if you look at what it takes to install it, it's like, go download these 30 mods, extract them, put all this stuff together, zip them back up into BSAs, and it's going to take you like an hour or two to install this mod. And the reason that is because the guy who made the compilation of all these mods can't actually bundle them and put them on the Nexus because he doesn't have I don't know who it is. They don't have the rights to those files, right? But what we can do with Wabbajack is we automate that, right? We can automate downloading, we can automate creating the patched ESP and all the other supporting infrastructure around that. And so we do have a mod list for Fallout that uses that, at least last I talked to somebody, they were using it. And it's just, you click one button and it installs it, and there we go. And some of our mod list authors are starting to do that for other things, like scour the internet for every single texture overhaul you can find and find the best texture for every last bit of Skyrim, right? That sort of thing. No one would ever install that because you really want to download 200 variants of all these different textures to install it. But if it's automated, that's better. Someone else is doing that for weapons in Skyrim. We have all these weapon overhauls, and maybe one weapon out of each mod is actually lore friendly and high quality and all this other stuff, and put together. Oh, hey, now we can have vampires that have unique armor and all this other stuff. But that's the sort of thing no one would want to spend the time to do that. Like I've installed some mod lists where it's like, okay, now you're going to install weapons. So the next 30 mods you download are overhauling one weapon at a time. And you get to the end and you're just like, do I really care about 2K arrows?
Right.
That sort of thing. But in game, at some point you'll look at it and be like, that is a crappy texture. I wish it was better.
Well, and there's another potential I see for this is things like you mentioned that you might grab a mod and it'll have 30 weapons in it, but maybe like, hey, half of them are lore friendly. Somebody could take that, create a patch for it on their own that disables those unimmersive weapons, and now combine those two things into a mod list, right, with Wabbajack. And now all of a sudden, here's an immersive weapon pack. Takes all the weapons that are available for the game and cuts all the ones, even if they're within the same mod, it'll disable those records. And here you go. Here's an immersive pack of all the weapons available.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing is a lot of collaboration on that. So there's one person, or actually one guy on our Discord created his own Discord, and he's sitting down and doing this with weapons and clothes and all this other stuff. And then when he's done, he'll have like a mod list that doesn't really do anything. It's just metadata, right? But he has that metadata that he can ship around and say, hey, here's a set of instructions that Wabbajack can use that you can put in your own mod list if you want to use my set of, cool presets and that sort of thing. And that's just something that hasn't been supported. For obvious reasons.
That's really cool. One of the guys on our team, Sir Locke, is actually working on creating. Here's all the mods that have been released for Sim Settlements that are active and supported. Like he's taking, removing some of the ones that are maybe derelict that don't work anymore with the current version, and then the supporting mods that work well with it, and then creating a list. And we've always been, whenever we talk about it, it's always about this is kind of a meta chunk that would work well in other mod lists. So like, hey, if you want to include the Sim Settlements experience within your Wabbajack install, you could merge it in. You could merge this into it. I think that we've been talking about that a lot, how cool that would be to help players get into what has become a huge little sub-mod community. To help them get into it is like, here, this is going to get you started, and you can use it, with your Horizon pack or whatever else you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And the kind of the equivalent of that in Skyrim is the Legacy of the Dragonborn, this museum that kind of makes you complete every single quest and get all this stuff. And there's hundreds of patches for everything for that.
Right.
So those are sort of things that we'd love to see more collaboration with people on, and we're seeing that happen. It's exciting.
It's very exciting. I mean, from the player perspective, like thinking about the last time I went and played Skyrim, I remember I didn't have the time or patience at the time to actually go through and find, an Ultimate Skyrim and go through all the steps. So instead I just like went to Nexus, went to top mods and downloaded like the first 150. I just installed them by clicking the Nexus Mod Manager install, and that's it. That's all I did. And then I used loot to auto sort and just played. And, it was fun, but there was like a lot of redundant crap, and there was just so many things I didn't know what I was supposed to do with. The world space was so huge, I didn't know where to begin. And it became kind of, I just got bored after 20 hours or so, as opposed to like getting in deep. And part of that is because I didn't curate my own thing, and so I probably was missing out on the actual best stuff that's available for it. And I think that people playing Curator is actually good for the game in general, and good for us mod authors is that if we're delivering high quality content, I think it'll get to even better. It'll get to an even wider audience, because you're going to allow those people who wouldn't normally take the time to go through and read all of your install notes and make sure that they have the corresponding patches to have a good experience with your mod. will now get a chance to experience your mod, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's fun to see that. I actually love when, there's times we have people show up in our Discord, they ask a question or something, they're like, oh, it's installing, it's working, and then you don't hear from it all, and it's like, guess it worked. That's awesome.
They're gone forever, but
yeah,
lost deep in Skyrim. That's fair.
Yeah, that's right. So we were talking about games supported. Yeah, so
other games outside of these two.
Yeah, we've kind of jumped in the center here, but yeah, so we have tested everything from Oblivion up through Fallout 4. So that would be Oblivion, Skyrim Legendary Edition, Skyrim Special Edition, Fallout 3, New Vegas, Fallout 4.
That's a good catalog, and I know there are people out there still playing Morrowind today, but man, you guys are masochists.
And you know what? Every time someone says, hey, is there a Morrowind list? I'm like, nope. But if you want to make one, let me know. And because there's slight differences between the different games, and thankfully some things like BSA formats are mostly the same between them. But Morrowind, I haven't tested it. But if anyone wants to dive in and do that, I will support them on the code side.
Oh, that's awesome. So if there are problems with it when they try it, you'll make the effort to make it work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, for the longest time, we didn't have support for looking inside BA2 archives. And then Lively started creating, well, he wanted to create this one mod list that used the weapons and all that other stuff. And I'm like, hey, give me a weekend. I'll work on this.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. Like I don't think I could ever play Morrowind again. I can't even get myself to play Oblivion anymore. But yeah, I'm sure there are. I mean, there definitely is a hardcore audience out there. I'm curious if anybody will emerge and take advantage of this. Now I want to double back a little bit. And I know we're all over the place. This is just my style. My brain's all over the place, but I try and take notes to try and get us back on track occasionally. So one of the things you mentioned when we were talking about, because I don't want to leave. There are so let's set this stage. A lot of my audience are actual mod authors, so there are going to be a large number of your detractors that are listening to this, and I don't want to leave them feeling like I am just 100% on board with this and don't see their pain, because I do see where they're coming from. So I want to talk about one of the other issues. We talked about the exposure issue. I think that it's a hard sell for me to let the exposure issue block it, because I think that Nexus is doing the same thing already, and mod lists cause the same thing exposure-wise, is that if you're not putting a lot of effort into marketing your stuff and making yourself known, then that's not going to be hurt any more now by Wabbajack than it was by mod lists. I think it's the same lack of public view of your name. You're just a small little blip
I would agree
on there. So I don't think that is a big issue, but I think support is something you brought up. And I think this is an issue, and I'm curious where you've seen it, because I predicted that what would happen if people started putting their mods in mod packs is that the support issues would go to the mod pack author more often than the mod author. Are you seeing the same, or are you seeing the opposite, or something in between?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have a back channel in Discord, which is pretty much full of swearing by people dealing with support issues from other things. And because a lot of it is like, we get the same thing, right? It's like someone walks in, hey, can I install mod X into this mod list afterwards? And it's like, did you read the manifest? It's already in the mod list, that sort of stuff. But yeah, absolutely. And I think this comes, this is my counter argument to people. It's like the people who download and use these mod lists are not modders. Right. They're not advanced users. They don't know where to look. They don't even they wouldn't even know how to pull up the console a lot of times. And for those sorts of people, they're not going to go and bother you on your Nexus page because they don't even know you exist. And I mean, yeah, that's
part
sad,
of, that's
right?
That's the other half. That's the other problem, right?
That's the other half of it, right? But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, they come to us. They come to us and say, hey, I installed this and this looks like crap. What happened here? And when we say, 9 times out of 10, it is like, okay, did you install anything after you installed the mod list? Well, yeah, I put this and I, sorted it after I put it at the bottom of the mod list, and it's like, no, that overrides everything, and don't do that. So there is that sort of support stuff that we run all the time. And I think it's important though, that the mod list authors take that position of support. We do encourage people not to modify the mod lists after they're installed. I mean, it's up to each individual mod list author how they want to run that. I am more on the side of like these things should be highly curated, and yeah, you can modify it, but you're not going to get any support if you do.
Right.
But I think it's important for the buck to stop with the Wabbajack mod authors, the mod list authors, right? And not pass it on to the mod authors themselves, because a lot of the times, you know, these conflict resolution patches or whatever they're including else in there may point the finger the wrong way, so to speak, you know? But on the other hand, it's like, I also don't see a lot of situations where, let me rephrase this. I think the reason that mod authors have to do a lot of support right now is because people are building their own mod lists.
Right.
And when they download some list of, you know, here's basic Skyrim install, right? Or Fallout install. And they go through the list and they install the mods and they get a blue face or a black face, unfortunate term for that. But when they they get
dark
their
face bug.
There we go. Right. And they get that bug and they're like, well, the last thing that touched it was this mod.
Oh, yeah.
And it could just be as simple as the mod list is old. Like what they installed from, you know, what they looked at when they installed it was old, and they've installed a newer version that overrides one more record, and suddenly it breaks a whole bunch of mods down the chain. And that's once again where I say, you know, with Wabbajack, it's like, we won't even install if we're going to install the wrong files.
Sure.
You know, which does mean on weeks like this past week when Skyrim updates and half the you know, script extender DLLs haven't updated yet. Yeah, people aren't installing much. Sorry, we can't give you anything because there's nothing to install. The entire modding community is broken right now.
Right.
You know, and then once eventually all those DLLs get updated and we update all our own mod lists and stuff starts moving along again.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing I've experienced, because I can't tell you how many times it happened just right before I made Wabbajack. I installed a mod list and I asked somebody like, why are all my signs bouncing? And they're like, oh yeah, because you installed the newest version of this mod where they did some weird physics thing that doesn't work with something else on the mod list, and now this happened. You know?
Yeah. I can definitely say from a mod authoring perspective is the amount of support requests I get that I first have to go through a huge level of eliminating variables about other mods first. It's like, okay, did you start a character with just my mod installed and confirm this issue happens? Because a lot of time that thing you said of, hey, I installed your mod and X broke is such a common thing. And it's like, it could be how it's interacting with another mod. It could be as simple as your load order, what order that mod is in the stack. It could be, you know, files overwriting each other. There's so many variables in there that it becomes a support nightmare. I think every mod author is used to dealing with. And a lot of people just abandon the whole idea and just get out of Dodge and leave their mod kind of derelict out there, which is bad for the community as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we do take that support side of it seriously. And like I said, you know, we won't install the list. The Wabbajack won't install the list if it can't do it right. And the other side of it is that we've started our own curated lists of our mod lists. So anyone can go and make a Wabbajack mod list. You're free to do that, whatever. But when you load up Wabbajack, there's a gallery of mod lists that you can select and install. And those are ones that we actually support. So we have chat channels on our Discord for those. The authors of those are in special back channels where we discuss these things. We actually have a team that validates these mod lists before they get approved, and we get this sort of stuff. There's a process, you know.
Sure.
And it's a mutual support thing. I mean, like once people get get their mod list on our curated list of lists. That's the term I tend to use. You know, then there's other mod authors or mod list authors that'll come in and offer support and say, hey, you know, and there's a lot of cross pollination, that thing happening. And I think that's where we want to go with this, is like, we want to have a high quality product where people can just walk up and install it and get playing.
I want to interject real quick there.
Yeah.
Is you called it a product, but I think one of the reasons that you're getting more community support than anybody else who's attempted this is that you aren't charging a dime anywhere.
Absolutely.
I do this too, is I call my software products, is because you have to market it, you have to support it as if it's a product, even if there's no money in it. Like there's...
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a Patreon because
Sure.
there are costs involved in this. But aside from that, you're right. We don't charge anything for it. In fact, we can't. The Wabbajack is GPL3, so that's the software license, which basically says, yeah, you can copy it, you can even sell it, but you have to give the source code away for free to anyone who asks it. So what's the point in charging if you got to also give it away for free? And on top of that, we also so we're one of the only mod tools that like cryptographically signs our executable. So we've gone through a fair amount of work to get this kind of like, when you install an app sometimes or you start to run something, Windows says this is an unknown publisher.
Right.
So we sign our executables and have like official builds. So when you open up the tool, Windows will recognize, oh yeah, I've seen this executable
Oh, that's
before.
cool.
This
Nice.
is good to go. But all that kind of comes together in this sort of thing where if people install, if people were to use a bootleg copy of Wabbajack that by someone who's modified it or tried to commercialize it or something, it will be very obvious because the publisher won't be right on the executable. Windows will complain about it, saying this doesn't look right, and that sort of thing. So yeah, we're trying to push very hard towards zero monetization of this.
Yeah.
Someone could take a mod list and paywall it. There's not a whole lot we can do about that.
Right. But I think the community
tool
frowns on
itself is
that in
free.
general, as the people kind of rejected Ultimate Sky. Well, not everybody, but there were a large number of people who hooted and hollered at Ultimate Skyrim for doing such a thing. So
yeah, and it's interesting. There's been a lot of, like you said, a hoot and hollering about Ultimate Skyrim. On the other hand, they haven't actually paywalled it yet. I mean, back in beta it was, a year and a half ago or something. But now that it's released, it's not really there.
Right. Well, I think part of people believe that was because they shouted, and maybe that's the case. Squeaky wheel gets the grease is very true.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, and I know they're still trying to figure out what they want to do there, and
right. I didn't mean to drag you into that part. I just was. It's just interesting to see how this stuff all shakes down. I personally love the Patreon model of doing things. I think that you guys are doing right. That's the way we do it, because it serves two purposes. One is it keeps you engaged with the product so that you can continue to develop and support it. So then things like your list of lists don't just become like a lot of mods we see. They get cast aside. The mod author's bored of the game. They don't want to deal with support issues, and this thing goes away. So now you have incentive to keep doing it. And it's only the people who feel the value of your work are contributing. So nobody is forced. There's no coercion. There's no paywall. I think it's a great model. I think Patreon is fantastic. It's one of the better tools that's come out of the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's good. It's just a good way to run this sort of stuff. Like I said, we have like build services and stuff around these curated lists, so we're constantly like we get streams of mods that are updated from the Nexus because mod authors delete old mods, which is, please stop doing that. At least keep one or two versions back, right? Because like right now, especially this past week, where like half the people update their mods and delete the old versions, so you can't roll back Skyrim and use a previous version because it still won't work. All this other jazz. Anyway, so we have build servers that multiple times a day download every curated mod list, and if it's changed, and then check and make sure all the downloads are still valid and all this sort of stuff. And that's what the Patreon funds help a lot with keeping all that infrastructure going. And
that stuff gets expensive fast. The one thing that is interesting with some of the stuff you just said about the old versions and everything brings me to another set of questions regarding this. So this is something I'm very personally interested in because of the development cycle we've gone on with Sim Settlements, where we update every 2 to 3 weeks. We have major expansions come out about at least once a year. So we've got a ton invested in making sure players download our latest version, and obviously that conflicts with the Wabbajack model of trying to keep people on the same versions that are within that mod list. So is the key to making things successful a mod like mine, where we're trying to do it almost a SaaS style? What is it for us, for those of us who are doing this? Because there's a few other mod authors who are in the same boat. What do we do to ensure that our users have the best experience with Wabbajack?
Yeah, for that I would say just keep current version and current version -1 on the Nexus, because that allows us at least that gives us time. So when you upgrade your mod, we still have time to upgrade the list and get it, and we do that pretty fast. I mean, a lot of this stuff is, and I would like to get better about finding a way to automate the notification of that and tell our mod list authors, hey, there's a new version of this out, you should check it out. But in general, these people are really good on top of this sort of stuff, and that just gives them time, like, so we don't have that time where it breaks, because what's going to happen is, let's say you just delete the current version of your mod and you put the new one on. Well, anyone from that point until we update the list is going to not be able to install it. They'll run Wabbajack. Wabbajack will download everything, and then it'll say, you know what, there's one archive I couldn't download, and so sorry, can't help you right now.
So in one sense, that model, though, I would think would encourage someone like me to keep deleting my old versions to make sure Wabbajack's forced to update the lists. What I have opted to do instead, though, is I have every version ever released of Sim Settlements is still live today. You could download the very first version, which to me that seems
that's
like
a higher support load. That is a higher support load on you to do that. So that's where I like to see like current version and version -1 at least allows for that buffer time.
Yeah.
But also, like, if I get 2 versions behind, well, yeah, then my mod list breaks, and that's kind of the slap on the hand. Update it,
Right.
And because like I said, right now the problem we have in the Skyrim community is Skyrim updates, and so first thing we have to do is tell everyone to roll back their version of Skyrim.
Okay.
So we can do that. And then all of the SKSE plugins haven't updated yet, because those take a while, because SKSE has to update, and then all the DLLs have to be updated. And so that's like a week-long process for all that stuff to filter through.
Right.
But right off the bat, some mod authors will say, okay, new version of Skyrim, I'm going to update my mod, boom, and I delete the old version.
Right.
Well, now modding, like I said, modding's broken for a week, because I can't upgrade because the DLLs aren't working, and I can't downgrade because I can't use your mod on the older version because of whatever reason,
Right.
And so it creates that. I've been there even before Wabbajack. It's like, I'm going to install this mod list, and okay, guess not this week. I'll check back.
That was one of the big, so like when Creation Club came out, I think there was a pretty big mixed reaction on it, where some of us were like, oh, this could be amazing. We could get new stuff from big groups and companies, and then others were just like, this is just them doing paid modding again. And then I think that anybody who might have went away from the detraction side and just been like, fine, whatever, it's microtransactions I can ignore. Instead now, they're reminded every few months of what a pain in the ass it is by the fact that it breaks F4SE. Which is pretty funny. So yeah, even sans Wabbajack, they're still in the same boat. I know every time that we know a patch is coming out, like on our Discord server, everybody's warning about it. Like, make sure you back up your EXE. Like, this is about to come. The storm's coming. Winter is coming, is what it feels like now.
Yeah, and it's fun though, because we're even like now. So we're at the point where in the next couple of weeks, Wabbajack 1.0 is going to be coming out, and it's at this point, it's pretty much everything I wanted it to be.
Okay.
But now we're kind of looking at these new areas of like, hey, what's something else we can do for the user? So one of our developers was recently like, you know what? Steam has a command line interface. We can like ask people if they want to downgrade, and then downgrade for them. If that's what the
that would be
needs.
awesome. Yeah.
And the little things like this, where it's like, wow, that's pretty cool, and so we're still looking into that. It's one of those things where there's a balance to be struck between automation and like things that could screw the user over.
Oh yeah, well, I can tell you right now that if you did that to Fallout 4, you would cause a lot of problems, because they changed their header version. So the new EXE requires a 1.0. I'm sorry, any mods saved in the creation kit from whenever the patch was, Thursday forward, have a 1.0 header, and they will not load into a game version earlier than the current version. And so
exactly. And so there's definitely, and that's where that whole Wabbajack works on that concept of like garbage in, garbage out, that like it will never create a worse experience than the input mod list. But yeah, there's definitely those things where you're going to have to make sure that the input is good. And
Sure.
we already do that. So one thing Wabbajack does do is that it'll auto clean your base game files. I don't know if Fallout has this issue, but in Skyrim, our ESMs that come from Bethesda have errors in them.
Oh yeah, we have that.
Yeah. So one of the things is you got to clean them, right? So we have this process in Wabbajack known as binary patching, which is basically given a source file and what you want the file to look like, we can create a set of instructions on how to turn the source file into the output file. So we're not shipping files, we're shipping instructions on how to modify files. And we can use that to do things like flag plugins as ESLs, to clean plugins, that sort of thing. And so we do that for the base game files, is that when the mod list installs, it looks at your game folder and looks at your ESMs and says, okay, these need to be in this, unmodified state, which they are. So now we will generate clean DSMs for you and put them in a mod folder. So we don't modify the game files, but we put them in a folder in Mod Organizer.
Yeah.
And so that's another step that's removed from that process,
that's very nice. It's all, all of it is under the hood. It's very impressive. And for those of us who know how to mod, you say all this stuff and it sounds amazing. But to the average person who's probably coming on board and heard about Wabbajack and is trying it, the beauty to them is all of that nonsense. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to know about it. It just magically click a button and they have this insane mod list installed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when people ask, why are you doing this? I'll tell you a funny story about that in a second. But really, the end goal is to make it a one-click installer.
Yeah.
I click one list and I'm done. It'll never be that fast,
right.
But we're at 5 clicks, 10 clicks right now, which isn't bad. I'll take that. But yeah, people were recently asked. Something came up in our Discord recently, and I cracked a joke that my grand plan is finally coming to fruition, that I don't have to install mod lists anymore. I have people that build Wabbajack mod list installers for me, and now I'll never have to mod again. And they're like, that's a lot of work to do something like that. And I'm like, that's actually the truth though. Like, I've installed like 10 mod lists or so, and I'm like, I hate this. Like, why can't someone just do it for me? And I'll just make a little tool that people can use. And then, half a year later of all my free time, we have something that works, I guess. So it wasn't efficient, probably wasn't a wise use of time, but hey, everybody can benefit now.
I mean, the potential I see for this is that we're going to see some curated mod lists that create feelings of completely new games that are super immersive, pull you in from minute 1 of your playthrough until hour 200, because that's something I don't think most of us have actually experienced, because it's like we talked about earlier, inevitably you run into some conflict you never anticipated, nobody had anticipated, but there are people who are hardcore. Like, for example, one of the people in Subsonance community, Raybo, is so passionate about getting good mod lists together and spends so much time iterating over and playing the game over and over again and curating and fine-tuning his mod list that he'll go through and play for 50, 60 hours in a playthrough, find a little mistake and go fix it so that the next time he plays that's not there anymore. And after people have been doing this for literal years, and you get enough of those iterations, they can create that perfect polished mod list that's going to feel like this brand new perfect experience. And I think all that effort that you're putting in is going to pay off in spades to all of us. And I don't think any of us really know what that's going to feel like. And we probably won't for a little while, because it sounds like it's going to be a while before people really wrap their heads around how powerful these tools you've created are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, we kind of have 2 extremes right now in our mod list. So we have the everything in the kitchen sink mod list. Those are the Lexi and, FO4EE, these or like where it's kind of like hardcore playthrough, or here's everything you need to play Legacy of the Dragonborn, and then we have the other extreme, which is what we have this mod list called Noise, nice overall improvement. I'm not sure for special edition, I guess it is, but it's that sort of thing of like, we're just going to go through and kind of do what Step did in Skyrim LE. We're just going to fix the bugs. We're going to install some texture packs so it doesn't look gross anymore, and a few perk overhauls, kind of vanilla plus type thing, I think is the term people use. And then those are the 2 extremes. But I would love to see more of this come out. We have the same sort of thing for Fallout 4. It's just like texture upgrades, yeah, I would love to see more of that. The sort of, here's a horror overhaul, or I know some of our developers are working on, like I just want to nail combat as much as possible.
Sure.
And then we'll kind of, maybe we'll combine that with some of these other texture overhaul lists to create something that's comprehensive.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I definitely see something like the horror overhaul you mentioned. Like there's an author working on something like that, but he's doing it all independently, like building most of the stuff himself. And I think that there's a lot of that going on, which this could solve as well, is that there tends to be, and I'm guilty of this too, of mod authors who have this vision for a big way to change the game will end up reinventing the wheel a lot, because we want to make sure that our users get this experience that's already available in another mod. Horizon is a big mod that's known to do this. Is that the creator Zawinul has this huge vision for how Fallout 4 should play, and he's probably redoing a lot of work that's already available in other mods because it's easier. Well, he gets more tighter integration, obviously, so there are reasons from a developer standpoint maybe to do it yourself. But I think somebody could get together their vision without having the programming skills or the massive amount of development time required, and they could bring all these things together and create an experience it just feels like a new gameplay. And I think that we're going to see some of that. That's something I would like to contribute at some point if I ever have enough time between building mods. I would love to see more in that direction, and I think there's a lot of potential there.
And there's another great example of that. So we have a mod list that's for Skyrim VR, because when it comes down to it, Skyrim VR is the bastard child of Bethesda, and that they kind of forked it from Skyrim Special Edition and then never updated it.
Right.
So half the mods need all sorts of patches and changes, and which we can support all that through binary patching and stuff. We can download these files and tweak them a little bit as needed to get it to actually work. But that's a fantastic thing where there's a lot of the developer who works on that, Timboman is his name. He has tried to explain to me sometime like all the things that are wrong with that version of Skyrim, where you have to extract some BSA files because otherwise they don't load in time and your game crashes because it tries to display something that isn't there, and just all this weird stuff. It's just a terribly designed engine. But he's fixed a lot of that stuff. So it's like, hey, if you got a VR headset and you just want to dive into heavily modded VR Skyrim, there you go.
Right.
And that's fantastic, because there's so much knowledge required to even get to that point that being able to play, that it's like, it's just not worth it for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got me. I'm now eyeing VR headsets. It's like, I don't really have room for this, but man, I just want to try it.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people are saying that after the Alex reveal. It's like, oh my god, we get more Half-Life and it looks amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I also saw that was a thing I had noticed on the Steam page for Alex, is that it's going to have a patch for Source to allow for modding right out of the gate, which we haven't really seen that in VR yet. Nobody's actively supporting mods, but they're looking like they're going to be one of the first. Because even getting mods in Skyrim and Fallout 4 VR is like, we're just taking advantage of the fact that the game will load them. It's not actually like they gutted the mods menu out of it, even though those two games have it natively now. They're not in the VR version because Bethesda just didn't want to deal with that headache.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something where, I should mention this too. I mentioned all the Bethesda games, but we have, kind of beta level support for a bunch of other games that Vortex supports in various levels of testing. But Stardew Valley, Darkest Dungeon, Witcher games, I think are the ones that are currently in testing. Not a lot of mods for those, but we kind of just skimmed, the Nexus and found like what are the most modded games after Skyrim.
Yeah.
And so, and those integrate with Vortex because, Mod Organizer doesn't really support those. But these other games, like this thing can be applied to almost any game out there that has a lot of downloads and a lot of installs to do. So, we're all like looking forward to Cyberpunk as well. It's like, so the whole team is just going to be gone whenever Cyberpunk 77 comes out, and then whenever modding comes out for that will have support in Wabbajack so fast. I don't even know what it'll look like, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it is interesting how much the other games lag behind. Like after Bethesda games, like the next, it's something like every Bethesda game has tens of thousands of mods, and then I think the next closest is like Witcher 3 has like 3,000 mods or something. Like it's just such a massive leap.
Yeah, and I've played modded Witcher, and it's like I got 20 mods. Okay, that like what else? Well, there's a 20 mod limit. That's the fun thing about that engine is you get more than 20 mods and the game like stops loading. But yeah, but I've downloaded that many, and it's just like, now what? I mean, like I've overhauled a few basic systems, and there's just no more mods that really enhance anything,
Yeah.
So yeah, and for some of those other games too, it's like, what's the point? I mean, you can sit down and download 10 files and put them in a folder. You don't really
right. Yeah, you don't need a tool for that. Although, I mean, still, some people, it's enough of a deterrent of being like, wait, I got to install this software, then I got to go to this website and click on all these things. Where instead it could be like, hey, here's this thing I've created. It's going to do this for you. You just click it and go. That's definitely a draw. And I think there's another angle to something like Wabbajack, is that it creates a gateway drug scenario. So if somebody downloads a mod pack and they see how quickly they can get this experience up, there's going to be a lot of people who do that for the first time and realize, oh, modding is not that scary. And then they're going to start diving in a little deeper, and they're going to want to create their own mod list. And I think we're going to create new mod users. And I think that is kind of an imperative, because I think we're getting to a point in gaming where it's so mainstream and it's so easy to game in general that the number of people in the future who are going to be willing to put in the effort to download and install mods is going to dwindle in the percentage of actual player base. And I think we have to do something about that. I think if you just sit idly and let the next generation not want to mod anymore, well, then modding is going to die. Because if I don't know if people realize this, but while there are a lot of old hands who mod, the vast majority of work that gets done in modding is young people. And it's high school and college kids who have a lot of free time, and they're the ones creating these mods. And if they're never playing mods, then we're not going to have new creators of mods. So I think it's pretty important that we continue to make it as easy to get into as the as the AAA space is making it to get into gaming in general.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because the problem gets worse as the time goes on. Because what I noticed was that when I used to install Step, a good 6 years ago, it was 200 mods, and you'd overhaul it and the game and most of the systems, and that was it. And now what we're seeing with Skyrim Special Edition is that you need I think our just a little nice overhaul of Skyrim is 300 downloads. Jeez. And when you're done, it's 120 plugins, I think it is. That's not a whole lot. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to download and install, but it's not huge or expansive. I mean, it's not merging any plugins or anything like that. But it's just the game is that old that to bring it up to something that looks somewhat realistic, it's it takes something like that. And it doesn't help that the engine is kind of shall we say old. I was playing through a couple years ago. I played through Mass Effect Andromeda, which I don't recommend to anyone. But there's just one of those moments where I just looked and realized, wait a minute, my character has belt buckles and little hooks and stuff hanging off his belt, and as he's walking along, these things have physics and they're moving. The Witcher is the same sort of way. You're on horseback and your ponytail and your swords and everything is kind of clanging along the side. It's that never happens in Skyrim unless you install all the weird physics extensions, and those don't even work for a special edition, and they crash the game or whatever half the time, it seems like. It's one of those things where it's you gotta install a ton of mods just to make it look even marginally modern, right? Right. Fallout's a little better in that regard, but I think we'll see that as time goes on too, as games get more and more visually impressive. Fallout's been out for what, 3 years now?
4 years as of
4 years.
Came out in November 2015.
Yeah, and when it came out, people weren't exactly lauding for how awesome it looked.
Right, they were talking about it looks like last generation's games, right. For most companies. Yeah, they're always a little bit behind. Although it does look like they're trying to make a leap with the little glimpse they gave us with the next TES, which they're doing something that I anticipated the games industry was going to get to, and you can see we're merging to that with the Epic acquisition of Quixel. Is we're going to get to a point where everything is photogrammetry, and so it's just a matter of you're going to see lots of asset reuse, because there's only so many ways you can make a mountain texture, that Bethesda's trying to jump all the way to that, and then they'll be able to catch up finally because everybody else has nowhere else they can go. But like you said, little touches like those extreme physics and bothering to put in all those little details, I think that's the type of stuff that those are the little edges that bigger companies who are willing to throw more money at the problem are going to continue to do. Like you look at something like Red Dead Redemption 2 and the amount of what I think is excessive detail that they put into little things. We start to expect those. And then if we want to have a long life on a game, then modding those things in will be helpful to keep us immersed into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I look forward to that. I think it'll be great. It'll be interesting to see how modding adapts with that, because on one hand, you have the problem with that sort of thing of requiring specialized equipment and that sort of thing, or software. I'm not sure how many people would have access to a 3D scanner or whatever to go and to import this sort of stuff. But on the other hand, you have people like the guest you had a while back who has his own motion capture suit. I forget who that was.
That was Pandemic. Yeah, that was just my last guest.
Yeah, exactly. I was watching that before this, and occasionally you have people that get their hands on that sort of stuff, and so maybe we'll see an emergence of some of that as well. And
what I think will actually end up happening is we're going to have libraries and machine learning will fill in those gaps to where it's going to be easier for individuals to create pretty compelling content without needing expensive equipment. So I think that problem is going to solve itself because the industry itself is needs to reduce the price, because like not everybody has the money from Grand Theft Auto 5's online system to build a Rockstar or a Red Dead Redemption 2. Like that was they did the Amazon thing. Like Amazon is known for they're taking over a lot of industries because they basically supplemented them with the income from their AWS system. And so like a lot of I think like something like Red Dead Redemption 2 is the result of Rockstar doing that exact same thing. And so a lot of these other companies who don't have that cow to milk are going to they're going to be forced to create new alternative solutions to get them to that level so they can keep up and not die in the form of automation tools. And then those of us on the lower level, us creators who are individuals, get to benefit from that. So that's where I see things going. So I'm not worried about the fate of modding going anywhere in that regard. My biggest concern has always been user experience, because it's becoming a nightmare to install a good mod list. Because now one of the things that's funny about it is when Fallout 4 and Skyrim Special Edition opened up the door for more people to use mods by putting the mod thing right in the game, is we got a flood of new users. Like the number of people playing mods is bigger than ever for Skyrim and Fallout 4. And we had to go through the growing pains again that we went through for years of kind of establishing a relationship between mod authors and mod users, where people come in with expectations, and they come in with what's the phrase I'm looking for? They expect everything to just work, and so they can be kind of ignorant and be like, I can't believe you put out this garbage, like this trash doesn't work, and just like being really disrespectful, not taking the time to think about the fact that like, hey, these are individual people, using their free time to create this for you. They asked for no money, and you're holding them to the same expectations as a AAA studio. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that something like having an intermediary like mod packs, and I know you want to refer to your mod lists, but I'm using the phrase mod packs only because from the perspective of the user, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But those I think are a good way to ease those types of people in and keep them away from the creators who don't need to hear their crap. The downside to this, and this is another argument against this whole system, and this is something I'd like your opinion on, is that effectively what happens, I think this is actually the biggest fear for mod creators, is that then something like Wabbajack and your official lists become gatekeepers. Is that it becomes to a point where if I can't get my mod on one of your lists, I'm effectively dead in the water. I don't believe that, because I think that's only if you're looking relative. Like if you want to get to the millions of downloads, yes, that's true. But without it, those packs wouldn't have got millions of downloads anyway. But that's the whole thing we have to watch play out. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this idea of becoming gatekeepers? Because that is a concern I think a lot of mod authors have.
Yeah, it is a matter of trust, and I think that is one of the biggest problems in this community is and it's one that's gone on for years. I've read a lot of information in the past few months on drama from back in the Oblivion days and this sort of stuff. There's been a lot of unfortunate interactions between mod authors, between each other, and between the users, and a lot of trust has been lost, right? So my answer to your question is we have to trust each other.
Sure.
And work with each other, and we do. We just tonight had a mod author show up in our Discord and said, "Hey, how can I help my mods work better with Wabbajack?" And it's like, that's fantastic, that's awesome. And we, and a lot of we see that occasionally, all the time. Different mod authors show up in a Discord, and we talk and that sort of thing. And yeah, there are going to be those cases where a mod is just bad, right? It's like, like sorry, no one's going to include that. I mean, you can go and try to figure it out, find somebody to use it. That's fine. But I think a lot of times, What I've seen though more is just like everyone's always open to more, more options.
Yeah.
And we see that too in Skyrim. We just had a, and I'm so sorry to him. I'm about to butcher his name. But he made Ordinator and a bunch of Skyrim mods. And he announced a Werewolf overhaul. We already have Werewolf overhauls, but it's like this is his twist on it, and I like his mods.
Right.
And people are already talking about how they're going to use it and maybe tweak it here or there and that sort of thing. What I see more often than anything though is people just are interested in new ideas, new gameplay models, and it'll be a matter of taking your mod and finding someone who's interested in that one specific type of mod that you have and convincing them to use it. And I mean, I was listening to your other podcast with Juicehead, and I think there's an interesting point there too of like, I don't know what you do when you have 4 M4 models. Like down mods, right? Of the same gun. It's like I don't know what to do about that. It's the same sort of thing you get in Skyrim. There's maybe a bunch of different needs mods, hunger mods, that sort of thing, and it's PR. I think at that case, you have to go and market it a little bit. But I think on the other hand too, it's a lower barrier of entry, because right now what you have to do is you have to somehow get your information out on the Nexus, and you have to drum up enough support that people even know you exist, right? So they're going to have to filter through all the updates and all the most commonly downloaded version of whatever, and all of the people that are obsessed with posting anime body overhauls or whatever, and to finally get to your mod and then download it and then endorse it. And I think that's just gonna, it's a hard road as well there. Now we used to have code in Wabbajack that when you got done installing a mod list, you could click a button and we would go endorse every single mod on the mod list for you. And then we talked to the Nexus devs and found out the back end for that API is like apparently not very well built. And then they were kind of like, that server's about to die anyway. Maybe it wouldn't be best to have that. And I understand the whole endorsement system from a programmer's perspective. If you think about every user of the Nexus endorsing 1,000 mods, that's a lot of data. But I think I would like to see the Nexus. They've talked about coming up with an alternative for that, like some sort of system. Like the more mods you download, the less your vote is worth, or some sort of grading system there. But all that to say, I think it is a transition. It would be a transition in the community from marketing for the users to marketing for the mod list authors. And we're sitting in a place where we kind of control that list of mod lists, at least the official ones. We're nice people.
I mean, I can see this. This is just definitely going to create a kind of paradigm shift, and that's what people are afraid of, because it's changed. It's terrifying in that regard, because now all of a sudden, like you said, you have to change who you're marketing to. And I don't think most mod creators want to market at all. They just want to be like, here's the thing I created. If you're into it, great. If you're not, you're not. I'm an independent software developer, so I am marketing all the time. So this is just this was no big deal to me. I was like, all right, I'm going to have to get people interested in this and put out content and get them interested. So to me, like I feel like I can't even speak completely for most of the mod creators who are concerned about this. I am trying to empathize with their situation. And when you think about it from the perspective of, okay, previously, most mod players who liked the game or were interested right now would every day go to the Nexus of their preferred game, go to that homepage and look at the new mods that came out that day, because there's not that many. I mean, for Skyrim and Fallout, you might get 20, 30 mods a day that come out. It's not hard to look through that list and see if any of them pique your interest. Now, that will continue to be the trend forever for the hardcore mod players. But for the new casuals who were brought in by something like Wabbajack, which those I don't think are a concern anyway, because you wouldn't have had them as audience members in the first place. I think it's the half-hearted people, those people that come back, every year or two to do another playthrough, and they go through and are just picking out some mods. Like that audience, I think will stop browsing pages like the Nexus. They're going to be like, well, why would I do all that work? There's somebody who spends all their time paying attention to the mod scene. They know what's good. I'm just going to use their mod lists. Or like people who do streaming. they have enough, they're busy enough trying to like come up with content and entertainment value that if they can bypass the trouble of modding, of building a mod list, they're probably going to embrace that because, like I said, they're creating their own content indirectly. Like I've watched, I think it was Dan's Gaming on Twitch. He spent like 3 sessions of live streaming where all he was doing was troubleshooting Fallout 4 mods. I mean, he would skip that in a heartbeat if he had somebody who could build him a good mod list. So I definitely see that this has the potential to create a pretty big shift in the way users go, and that's terrifying. If you're a mod author who's not interested in marketing, and you just want your product to stand for itself, people to download it or not, I don't know what the solution is. I think this is one of the reasons that this has remained a contentious issue for so long in the mod community, because, like you said, Wabbajack isn't the first one to attempt to try and solve this problem. I think it's just the first one that didn't try and get money in the middle of it, and so it's starting out on a stronger footing.
Yeah, and I it's interesting though. What I've seen, sitting in the community too, and just kind of watching what's happening with the different mod lists and that sort of thing is I already see people being very open. And I'm not talking about Wabbajack mod list. I'm not talking about any mod list. Almost every major mod list out there has that channel where it's just like, what are the new mods that are coming out? People will throw something up there. And I think 2 great examples of stuff that have just like low end, like no marketing, but have just made huge splashes in the Skyrim community. There's 2. One's Rogue Shot. A guy just decided about a year ago to just start overhauling animal animations, and they're fantastic. Just little skeleton and animation changes that go from a saber-toothed cat looking like this derpy thing to actually scary, and then he goes and does it to rats and the whole 9 yards, and it's just like a new mod every month, just another animal overhauled. And it's just like an auto include, like, right. Oh, there's a new animation from Rogue Shot. Okay, put it in now. Because it's like it's a niche, right? The other one that cracks me up is someone decided, you know what, doors need more detail in Skyrim. So we have 8K textures for gates now. like the city gates can be 8K textures, which is insanity. But it's funny because it's just like, oh, another gate is out. Let's put that in. But what originally started was just one texture in this mod for the, what was it, Whiterun Gate or whatever. Yeah. And people see that, right? And it's not like someone's going to be like, you know what? What's funny is that I have seen on some mod lists, people are like, I don't like the color of the metal on that. And so, you know what? A week later, there's now another option in that mod for a slightly different color. And now it's included on every mod list I've seen,
I think one of the interesting things here, and another perspective that I'm just putting together right now, because I had never thought about it this way, is that right now we kind of have a gatekeeper that is the Nexus hot files page. If you don't make that in your first couple weeks, you're done. Like, you're dead. Like, you're gonna have to get real lucky. Now, if we think about it from a perspective of, okay, if mod lists become king, mod packs become king, and there are a couple of them, and they're competing for audience because everybody can only use one. They're going to be looking for edges themselves to keep people interested in their mod list. And so they're going to be scouring that mod page looking for treasures and things that they can differentiate their pack from other packs. So it might be, and this is just theory crafting, but it might be that this ends up creating a larger potential path, especially because I think we'll start to see mod list authors start to market. Like, they're going to be, putting out patch notes videos of like, here's the new mods this week that we've added in, or here are the things we've fixed or whatever. Like, I could see there being room for that, like where it would keep people excited and engaged. I can tell from experience doing patch note videos gets you a lot more downloads, and people appreciate it. They appreciate not having to dig through mountains of text files. We've become a very lazy people. We don't want to we don't want to read anymore. And so, like, I could see that happening with mod lists too, if you get a popular mod list. Now, obviously, because things are going directly through you, and this is where we'll get into an actual question and not me just grandstanding, is that are the people maintaining your lists, are they the guys on your team, or are these people in the community who are just kind of putting in a lot of effort, and you're recognizing it and allowing them to control their list?
Yeah, so what the process is here is that anybody at any time can make a Wabbajack list however they want, but that they can then, if they wish, submit it to us. We have a form you fill out, and then we have about we have like half a dozen reviewers, but it's really only just like 2 people will take a look at the list, they'll install it, and we have a it's actually from places I've worked, like we used to have like a job interview type checklist thing. I used to do some job interviews, programmers would come in and I'd interview them and stuff. And we had this sort of checklist of like, would you like to work with this person? What is their, how are their chops on this area of technology, whatever. So we have this sort of thing. It's like, what is the main view of this mod list? Is it, is it mostly a gameplay overhaul? Is it a texture overhaul? How do the graphics look? How does the game play? And these are all very general things, because this is a discussion that the reviewers, we all have kind of just a general discussion about how the mod list feels and plays and what it looks like. There's nothing wrong with taking a different artistic view of the way vampires look, or hey, if you're making a mod list for Skyrim Legendary Edition, it's gonna hitch, it's gonna be clunky. That's just the engine. That's just the way it is. We know that. Right. But at the end of the day, we it's not even really a voting thing. It's just more just like, what do you think? Is it up to snuff or not? And if it's not, we give feedback and say, hey, you know what? These are some areas we think could be improved. And most of the time, if those get fixed quickly, we'll just do another review real quickly and go for it. If we start getting spammed with like, okay, I changed one thing, what do you want next? Then we do have exercised the right to have like a 2-week cool off period of like, let's fix it and then come back to us. But once that process is done, and we've had several make it through that process, and actually only ever rejected one so far. So that's our current record there. Okay. Then we accept them in, and those people become part of our reviewing team, and they get access to the back end channels where we kind of maintain this stuff. They become mods on the Discord and that sort of thing. So we've kind of built this team from the people. I don't personally know anybody that's on the team with Wabbajack. It's all people that have decided to volunteer or have helped out. And we just kind of, we also have that process in our Discord where we have, so Wabbajack in Skyrim lore is the tool of Sheogorath, the god of madness. So all of our roles in Discord are themed after various parts of the Daedric gods. So nice. we have a role called the Golden Saint, which are just people that in Discord that we have kind of deputized as like, hey, sure. You seem to know what you're doing. You can answer questions. You have some basic modding rights, that sort of thing. So I'm saying all that to say we kind of built up this community where it's like, we're all working towards the same goal, and that is to make the experience better for users. We all love modding games. Sure, we give each other crap about. Just today we were having a in-depth debate about whether or not Mass Effect is a good game or not, and I think we're gonna have to ban the people that said it's not. But,
they started with Andromeda.
right. So all that to say, yes, this has a potential to be a problem. Gatekeeping and that sort of thing. I don't want it to be that way. I don't think anybody wants it to be that way. And
I think, but like I said, there's a potential for it also to be anti-gatekeeping in a sense, is that you open up potential for there to be multiple platforms instead of just fighting for hot files. Is now we could be fighting for positions inside of a handful of popular mod lists. But I think that only works if community members are controlling them, because if it's like you and a couple of friends doing it, your tastes are going to be locked in a certain direction, and that's the only stuff that's going to make it in.
Yeah, and on the day-to-day basis of it, I stay out of a lot of that. I got to the point recently where I just can't keep up on the day-to-day maintenance of the things, and we have other people that are on the opposite end where they don't code, they're not really modders, but they're just in real life they're management people at companies, right? And so they do the same for us. But and I think I want to make that clear too, like really the problem right now is just finding people that want to commit to making a mod list, making it work. And it is hard work. That the one mod list we rejected was specifically because of that it was just like, we have conflict problems. We can't approve something that's going to make people's systems crash. Right. And sorry, and you're more than welcome to fix that and come back to us. And so And so, yeah, I mean, if you have a vision, if people have a vision for this sort of stuff and they want to make it, hey, it doesn't have to be serious. One guy keeps tossing around the idea of doing pixel rim, which is where you downsize every texture to 1 by 1. And so, this will run on anything. And it looks like crap, but it's kind of a joke, right?
Right.
We're not even against that sort of stuff. It's just,
Yeah.
it's more of a matter of someone's got to take the time. It's a full-time spare time job, we'll put it that way,
Right.
For one person to maintain a mod list. So it's,
sure well, I mean, that's
why
why there's certain lists that are so popular, like Ultimate Skyrim. A bitrate sex list for Fallout 4 is super popular, but though, like, seeing people like that creating Wabbajack lists would be ideal, where if they're because they're already taking the time to maintain it for themselves and to keep everything up to date, and so then, like, having that extra step of, like, hitting export on their MO list and shipping it up to Wabbajack seems like a no-brainer and it would be beneficial to them, because they would gain it would ensure people had a good time with their list, because I'm sure one of the headaches of having mod lists out there is you get those people get constantly spammed with requests for help, because it's so damn complicated to actually install those lists, and this could take away a lot of that issue.
Yeah, exactly. And we do also, though, make a differentiation between those. So I like to bring special attention to people like Augspeed and some other people who wrote the mod list and produced the Wabbajack installer. I mean, that's a big job. We do have what we also call unofficial mod lists. The main one right now being the Lexi installer. So Lexi's Legacy of the Dragonborn mod list. The Wabbajack installer for that is not an official installer. Like, we have talked to the author, and they have given us permission to make the mod list under the stipulation that they don't support it. Right. So you go onto their Discord, you say, hey, I installed via Wabbajack, and they'll just do, exclamation mark Wabbajack that says, hey, don't ask these questions here.
Right. Here's a link to their server. Good luck.
Right. I love, and then they come over to us and they talk to us. In fact, and the guy that maintains that does a fantastic job of keeping it up to date. But it's a separate thing,
Right.
And it's a cordial relationship. Nothing wrong there with that. But there are other lists where the author of the list maintains the installer as well, and that's what I'd love to see more of.
Sure. There seems like limitless potential for all this if we can just get past some of these issues. So I'm curious to see how this develops over time. It sounds like you got a great amount of support up front already. How many mod lists do you have on your official list right now? I imagine it's small enough.
8.
That you know.
8
okay.
Currently. Yeah.
Do you have a potential cap on that, or could that go to infinity if this blows up?
Yeah, I think it could go pretty high. In fact, it definitely could. We could do more to make that overload. Like if you open up the installer of Wabbajack and it's just like pages of stuff, that's gonna get hard for users to filter through. But we do have a tagging system in place that we can flesh out more to be kind of like, I'm looking for hardcore Skyrim overhauls,
right.
And you could filter by that. So yeah, I would love to definitely see more of that. I think the biggest issue is just the community is not as big as we like to think.
Right.
There's the number of people who can maintain a mod list is pretty low.
Sure.
And that are willing to spend time to keep stuff up to date. And it's not a lot of work. Once you get it set up, you maybe have to recompile the list once a week or something like that as mods update. But it does take some time.
Sure. So I mean, I guess this will be a point where I talk to listeners directly. If any of you out there is one of those people that spends all that time and you're hardcore about maintaining a mod list, think about making it a Wabbajack install, especially if you're a mod organizer user. I imagine the process is pretty simple. Is that accurate? Turning a MO install into a Wabbajack install?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. The biggest thing you have to do is make sure that we can figure out where all of your downloads came from. So in the case of Nexus downloads, it's easy. Mod Organizer stores that next to the download. There's a little .meta file that has all the information in it. Other stuff that doesn't come from the Nexus, Dindulod, the script extenders, ENBs, that sort of thing, we have to write a handcrafted meta file for that. And it's not hard. You're just editing an INI file.
Sure.
And
what about files the user creates themselves? I know a lot of people who are into this themselves will create themselves like Delta patches to handle a lot of the little issues. can Wabbajack include those in, or do they have to release them? Because this is an issue in general we have, is that in order to release those, technically you need permission from every mod you touch, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, so that's an interesting debate, right? For some things like patchers, so for things like Z-edit patchers, where it's smashed a bunch of mods together, with a what was they called, a mod merge. We do have the ability to binary patch those. So, so we can take the input ESPs you have and detect how to change that into the output ESP. That's possible. There is a debate to be had on other things, like for LOD generation. This gets into a certain area of copyright law that I don't know anyone is really qualified to answer, and that is, like, if you have a model and I project that model onto a 2D plane and take a picture of it, and that's now the LOD that I use in my Dindu LOD system, is that copyrighted? Like, do you own the copyright of the screenshot that I took of your mod in my game, in the game I built? Maybe not. I don't know. So the answer to that question is yes. On any mod in Mod Organizer 2, you can put a little bit of information on the mod that tells Wabbajack to inline that mod into the installer.
Okay.
Now
that's what I was.
We put a giant warning on that, like, you can abuse this and violate copyright law. Don't do that. Right. And for our curated lists, we strike a balance there where we say, if you are whole copying bits into, like we don't directly copy the files from a mod that's on the Nexus into the installer. But there are some cases where it's like, didn't do law, like LOD generation, smashed patches, that sort of thing. It's a gray area. I mean, the way I look at it is like this. What is the point with a lot of this? The point of it is to make sure that the user knows about the mod author and that they're going to the mod author's page to download the mod, which, by the way, I should mention, we use official Nexus APIs to download the mods, and those are tied into the download system in the Nexus. So when someone installs a mod list with Wabbajack, you're getting credit. Your download count is going up in the Nexus. So that's all tracked properly, and you get the download points or whatever, the donation points or whatever they're called. So I mean, that's where I sit with that area of trust, right?
Sure. Well, that rule that we have to have permission to put out patches is really weird to me. Like, if I just take a bunch of weapons and alter their damage and put that out as a patch to save people the trouble, it seems like I should just be able to do that. And I think Nexus's policy right now is if you touch any other mod, or you should probably reach out to that mod author. And there's another weird loophole there. So the other the other weird fact here is that we're not on the Nexus. Right. Our mod lists are not on the Nexus. Neither is Wabbajack. So according to the way, and this is actually something that I should address now anyway. So, we used to store some Wabbajack installers on the Nexus, and they removed them and then told us they did it later, about a month ago, which that I wish that had done a little differently, but that's the way it went. But both Robin and I were quick to point out to Reddit and everybody else that this was a peaceful parting, if you will. Okay.
What basically happened is Wabbajack forced the Nexus hand. They're building their own mod pack installers. They call them mod pack installers, so I will now. They're creating their own mod pack installer. They're not ready yet. Last I heard, it's still in planning phases. They're not ready to make an announcement about how it works or how they're going to deal with these issues and that sort of thing. Right. Wabbajack being on the Nexus forces their hand. If we're there, they have to have an opinion. So it's easier for them to say, please don't host your files on the Nexus, which we don't. And we are just another tool that has access to the APIs, just like, any other browser or whatever. So I'm fine with that. That's understandable.
Now,
but that does leave us in a place where we can patch in ways that perhaps.
Right. I get what you're saying. Okay. So I guess this leaves an interesting question. So if, say, Nexus decided, you know what, we don't like the way you guys are doing things over there, and they cut off your API access, would you be able to revert back to your previous method to where it would not be advantageous for them to do so? Because it would be a shame for a scenario that could potentially come up. And I'm curious if what you've thought through on this is people start investing a lot of effort and time in maintaining Wabbajack list, and then Wabbajack loses access to the API. Do then those people who have spent all this time invested maintaining it, do they lose that work, or do you have a backup plan if that were ever to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we could always look at that, but I think it's important to also consider what the hypothetical case we just described. So
right.
What we're saying is that the Nexus would have a problem with what someone did to a file after they downloaded it. Right. We're in the same basket as Mod Organizer 2 here. Like, nothing stops anyone from downloading a file with Mod Organizer, going in and modifying the file and playing a game with a modified file. That's right. That's all that's really happening here is that we are modifying files on behalf of the users.
Sure.
And we can talk about,
I mean, it's on it's one of those things where at the beginning we talked about this, is that some of this is like technicality stuff. You're right. But at the end of the day, when you're just looking at it objectively, you're just like, well, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's technically correct or not. It feels iffy in this regard. And I'm not saying I am concerned one way or the other about whether or not you're allowed to do it. I'm just wondering that if it did your old method, I know you said they switched to an API because it was the scraping was being a problem, and I've done data scraping myself. It's very easy to get past detectors. In fact, there's like whole methods of programming to simulate your bots to look like users and get around issues like that. So I'm just curious that is in the long term, is there anything that's going to destroy Wabbajack in your opinion, or are you in this long haul and you have plans to do? Okay, cool.
No, and the weird thing, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, is that anyone who understands the HTTP protocol, my goodness, I'm getting tongue-tied here, understands that it's text. It's all text. When I contact the Nexus and when Wabbajack contacts the Nexus, it says, "Hey, I'm Wabbajack. I'd like to download this file." It literally in testing, I originally set it up that way, and I submitted it to the Nexus for approval, and they're like, "Hey, can you switch this to say that you're Vortex so we can actually track this and get it working and do some stuff on our server?" I'm like, "Sure." So I modify one thing, and then according to the Nexus's servers, I'm Vortex contacting them, right?
Right.
Like there's nothing in this that like encryption or anything that verifies that the client is what it says it is. So
sure.
Yeah, it's aside from stuff like IP banning, which is just insanity. No, I mean, and that's where I go with this, is that it's. I have not had a hostile view from the Nexus on any of this.
Right.
It's really just a matter of they're not ready to make a decision. I am. I don't want to wait for them. So I move ahead and yeah.
I don't think anybody who's using your software right now wants you to wait, because I think that you've got the best incarnation of this right now. And I think if nothing else, I would like to see Nexus playing with and learning from what you're doing to improve their own implementation, whatever that may be. And maybe for them, it makes the best sense to side with go all in on the creator side and do all the things that some of the creators are demanding to make sure they get the appropriate credit, whatever that is. I think that ultimately the implementation that's the friendliest to the end user is going to be the way that wins out, just because it's just the nature of this thing, is that the potential of something like Wabbajack, if it takes off and continues to be supported, which it sounds like you've got plans long-term for this, and you set up a Patreon to make sure that it can self-sustain and encourage you to keep involved, is that something like this that's the easiest for the users, it could have the potential to grow this community dramatically, and the bigger we are, the more power we actually have. So you made a comment that we often think we're way bigger than we are. And so we end up creating kind of little echo chamber among the modding community of where we are like, oh, I can't believe Bethesda's is doing this, or I can't believe they're going to fail because they're doing this, this, and that. And it's like, well, they're not. We're a tiny voice. Like, even though we're upset with that, clearly the vast majority of consumers are fine with it, or they wouldn't keep doing it. And so I think having a bigger community invested in what we're doing is only going to empower us. So I am all for anything that is going to increase our user count, because it gives us more power.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing there too, is that Bethesda likes us in so much that we continue to sell copies of Skyrim and Fallout 4, right? It's like
I
you at any time go to Steam and look at like the most played games, and Skyrim is just always there. It's insane. Exactly. I think growing the community is a great thing, and I like I said, I there's aspects of Fallout where the Fallout 4 that I like in the community there, and that is there is less history. A lot of these things really do just come down to, there's just long histories in the Skyrim community of people pirating mods and putting them on other websites, or stealing textures and claiming them as their own, and all this sort of stuff. And it's harder for me to just stand up and say, hey, we're nice people, let's talk. I've tried that. I've tried that a fair amount, and it's a different reaction from people than I thought I'd get.
Well, Skyrim's been through the ringer in that regard, because they had to survive through the Steam debacle with modding, which
yes.
So like they've got some wounds, and they've basically every iteration of an attempt to create paid mod packs. Skyrim went through it, but Fallout 4 did not. So like Fallout 4 has been largely isolated from all of the conflicts that have come, because Skyrim it's like double the amount of mods of Fallout 4 too. So like it has the longest history of modding period, and the biggest community is not even close. So like there's also, so it has lived through more contentious issues. It has a larger number of users and creators, which means that, if you just looked at like the percent of psychopaths in a population, there's going to be a larger number of those in in the Skyrim community. And now that everybody's voice is equally sized thanks to the internet, it can often seem like there's probably a lot more nasty people than there actually are. But anyway, I'm excited.
But on the other side of that, we have, it's been awesome to see a lot of people, the feedback I get sometimes from people. I think one of the ones that's impacted me a lot too was way back when Wabbajack, this was a couple months ago, someone on Reddit was just like, you know what? I forget exactly what happened. They had a back injury or something. Anyway, long story short, the guy can't sit down very long. It's just painful for him to sit in front of a computer. And he's like, I've always wanted to play a modded game, and I just can't sit for 10 hours and get through all of this. And it's like, now this is something where I actually just clicked a button and it worked. And hearing the, the testimony from you and other people is always exciting too. I mean, that's what keeps me going, is people that are like, that I never even heard of, because they never went to a Discord, because they never had a problem. They just sat down, installed it, and it works. It's like, oh, that's great,
Yeah.
I'll go back to dealing with this guy who's trying to get something to work on Windows 7, and I can't figure it out.
I tell you what, though, that is definitely a good way to build a strong community, though, is even though, there's probably a lot of users who are using it pain-free, is taking that effort to help those people who are struggling get through it, is that you'll create lifelong supporters out of those folks. And I got a lot of positive. In fact, some of my biggest supporters who are now help me test and stuff have directly said to me, the reason I'm on board and always will be is because the way I watch you treat even the most hostile of people. Like, when I first launched my big popular mod, people would come at me viscerally, and I'd be like, okay, I hear what you're saying. That sounds terrible. What can I do to help? And that's not the usual attitude that you get in the modding community. Is like I said, there's been a history of hostility between creators and consumers, and I think it sounds like you're making the effort to be one of the people that throw the good customer service out there first.
Yeah, and there's always the balance there, right? I'm not going to claim that there's days that I wake up and someone's like, this sucks, and I'm like, wow, I just woke up. How are you doing this morning? That's on a good day, I'll say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everybody's human. But I was just saying, I think that there's it can go a long way in this community to helping out those people that are struggling, even if they come to cursing at you. So because one of the other things, and the reason I brought up that idea of like, what would you do if the Nexus kicked you off, is I'm curious what the long-term plans are for Wabbajack. So in the same way that we've been talking about that mod authors, if they want to get their stuff seen, have got to make an effort to market. You guys on Wabbajack kind of are in that situation too. And now that you've been cut off from the biggest modding scene in the sense that you're not allowed to put your lists up there, right, what are your plans to ensure that the community around Wabbajack continues to thrive and can grow?
Yeah. So what's fascinating is, like I said earlier, we're at 10,000 people on Discord, and we haven't marketed except by word of mouth so far. So we're gearing up for a 1.0 release. I want to say December 1st, but I there's some polishing we may want to do before then. I'm not sure. So anyway, pretty soon, next couple weeks. we're gonna launch 1.0, and that's when we're going to hit the PR side of it pretty hard. So a lot of that will be going to YouTube. I follow a lot of YouTubers, BroDuel and people like that, and it's like, hey, I'll look up these people and contact them and say, hey, do you want to do a video about this? Twitch streamers or several Skyrim Twitch streamers, people like that, that I'll just email and be like, people like you mentioned Dan's Gaming earlier. It's like, hey, I've watched him too doing Skyrim. Some of my favorite clips from like weird bugs in Skyrim have been from his streams. These sort of people, and I mean, a lot of them are busy and that sort of thing, but we'll ping them and go from there. And YouTube as well. So that's one reason why I'm not sure we're going to hit the December 1st deadline I want to, is I want to actually create a fair number of YouTube videos. We're actually just like a short intro to Wabbajack. Here's how you use it. Here's what to expect. Because like you said, people don't read. I don't read. I'll mention something about that in a sec. But so I want to get some tutorials about like, here's how you create a basic mod list. Here's how you install a mod list. And get that out there too. And there's marketing for this sort of stuff, of just word of mouth and using social media and that sort of thing. Nothing too big or out of the ordinary, but I think a little bit goes a long way there.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I had thought about myself just whipping up a video of showing me installing a pack with Wabbajack, because I was so floored by it, and I was like, there have to be other people who, when they heard of it, thought the same thing I did. Like, I think I first heard about it from Juicehead. And when he described it, I was like, there's no way. There's just no way it's that easy. And then when I did it, I'm like, holy crap, it's that easy. And so having, an how to use Wabbajack video that's so short, you're shocked by how short it is. Like, that could be, like, that's almost a little mini publicity stunt of being like, here's how you use Wabbajack.
Yeah, big shout out to Juicehead. So we went from 300 users to 1,300 users in 3 days after Juicehead's first video. So like, wow. And that was before that, I had just a basic Discord. It's like, everyone's dumped into general chat when they arrive, and you see all the messages of people appearing, and once that happened, it was like, oh, right, this is going to be a problem. And thankfully, so Foxman is the other admin on our Discord, and he, like I said, is one of those people that was like, in real life, I manage people. I know how to manage Discord. Do you mind? And, I made a step of faith there and said, yeah, okay, we've talked for 2 hours. I guess I trust you. Go for it. And it's been fantastic. And he's, he said several times his whole goal is like, if I don't have to think about managing the people, and I can just code, then he's successful, and that's been fantastic. I just ignored Discord sometimes for days.
That's very fortunate of you. I had the same good fortune in someone named Demanding, which I won't go into her experience with Wabbajack, but she came to me early on when I had done some settlements and took over a lot of the community management, which I would have like gone mad if I didn't have that help. So mad props to Demanding for helping me with that. People like that coming out of the community is awesome to see. I guess the whole thing with the marketing and what I was getting at, or what I'm leaning toward, is at some point, do you anticipate having something? It almost seems like you're eventually, if this blows up like I envision it doing, because I think even though you're saying things like the community is small, I think the community has a lot of room to grow. And I think Wabbajack could be instrumental to that. I could see eventually you're going to eventually need to like democratize the mod list approval. Is that going through it manually with your little squad could become pretty cumbersome. And
yeah, definitely.
Some sort of rating system might be in order.
Yeah, we've thought of that too, and I'm not sure where the you kind of get back to the Nexus problem there, right? And then that you have a couple people that have all the endorsements, and what would really endorsements mean? Is it just people clicking, or I would love to see that too. In fact, it's interesting. A while back, I was much more for the Wild West. I personally have kind of been more towards the Wild West side of things, of just like, anybody create a mod list, it goes in the launcher, there you go, everybody start rating it. And the other developers and support staff I have kind of talked me back from that. Of it does create a world where, like most of things, let's be honest, on the Nexus, 60% of it's crap. you know, and the other 40% of it is good. And so you do get this sort of world where like, I mean, just go to Nexus right now and pull up the first 10 mods or 20 mods and make sure you have the not safe for work filter off. And you're just kind of like, what on earth, you know? And that's just what we live at, right? In that sort of world, you know. But yeah, I think we'll watch and see where that goes. There is going to definitely be that sort of thing. One of the things we do plan on doing, so we do own Wabbajack.org. There's a website there that has our mod lists and everything.
Okay.
I want to work on integrating more of the information on that site, so you can view the contents of the mod lists and that sort of thing on the website. It's pretty bare bones right now, but it's there. Our goal for the first launch is to make the progression for people to be, they go to the website, they download Wabbajack, they install the mod list. Maybe they watch the YouTube video in there. They're directed to do that. So that process does not include Discord. Like,
sure.
Like in a good situation, people shouldn't have to talk to anyone.
Right.
And to do this. And there will be those cases, but
So right now, if we were to send people, so people who maybe are just hearing about this for the first time listening to this podcast, or people who have just been on the fence about doing it, maybe now that I've said it's super easy, they might go do it. If they went to wabbajack.org, will they find an installing? Because I actually got it handed. Somebody sent me a copy of the file, so I didn't even know you had a website. I was under the assumption, I had no idea where I would go acquire this. So is that what you would say? Just go to wabbajack.org. Everything you need is right there. Yep,
exactly. So you go to wabbajack.org. You'll be on the, it'll direct you to, it actually says what you need, 3 steps for the requirements. You go download Wabbajack from GitHub. And then the second thing is you need a mod list, and it'll take you to a page where you can see the different mod lists, and you can view the mod list. And let's see, we have a download button on the page as well. So there is some integration there. And then you just load up Wabbajack. Actually, so you load up Wabbajack, and then you just load up the mod list inside Wabbajack, and you're off to the races. And there's a big link on each one of the mod pages that says, hey, read this Google Doc before you continue. So yeah, that sort of process is fairly painless right now.
Sure.
But there are those little situations where it could be improved, and there's little things that people just don't think about. Like one good example of this is the download APIs from the Nexus are behind the Nexus premium subscription. So you can't use Wabbajack to automatically download your files unless you have a premium Nexus subscription. It's $5 a month. Do it. It's cheap. But that's the thing we get a lot of times. It's like, hey, this won't download the files. Yep. Well, you don't have a premium subscription. Go do that. So there's just little things like that.
Yeah. See, this is one of the interesting things about the Nexus relationship, is that you would be driving tons of business to them. So I don't understand why they haven't embraced you. And because it would make more, because what I see could end up happening is you're basically grabbing all the data through their API, putting it on your own website, and now they've basically just killed themselves on potential revenue for premium subscriptions as well as ad revenue, because you're bypassing their system.
No. To be clear, so what we have in the installer is the mod ID and the file ID. So we still have to go back to the Nexus to get the download link to download the file. So it is all still hosted through them. But yeah, I see what you're saying. To be honest with you, I like it this way. I like being a separate entity. In a lot of ways, Wabbajack is even designed that way, where internally it doesn't know about mods and how they work, or what any of this really means. It's copying files, it's downloading files, that sort of thing. It's just like your browser. You have a web browser, you can go to web pages, you can download files.
Right.
The web browser doesn't, and like if your web browser is saying, you know what, do you really have the rights to download that image?
Right.
That's more of a server side thing than a browser than Chrome. If Chrome is like, you downloaded 5 emails that had, I don't know, parts of famous speeches in them or something, you really shouldn't be doing that. That's a little creepy. So I do like that decoupled nature,
Sure.
So yeah,
I guess just what's interesting is that with the potential of this, of how many users this could bring in, it seems to me like such a natural fit for the Nexus. It would be such a great place. They've already got, because what I was talking about there, of if you start democratizing it, you come with a rating system, endorsements, whatever it may be, you would effectively be creating a Nexus. The same general idea of like, here's the mod packs that came out this week. Here's the most popular ones. The same setup they've already got the infrastructure for. It's generating them cash on selling premium subscriptions. It just seems crazy to me that it's because that would be the ideal place to keep the knowledge of Wabbajack up, because it's where all the audiences are. Like, that's the audience you're after. I mean, granted, I think you're also after new audience of people who just like Skyrim or just like Fallout 4 and haven't considered modding because they think it's too hard.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting. I don't have insider information with the Nexus on where it is, why it is, but from an outsider's perspective, I don't know what is taking so long with it. Like they announced last February that they were working on this,
right?
And we have yet to hear any sort of like plans about how it's going to work or any sort of thing. And I understand I don't know. We all have our conspiracy theories. I think it's just politics. Trying to find the perfect solution maybe that makes everybody happy, and I don't think you're ever going to get that.
That's what my assumption has been as well. It seems to me like they hear enough complaints that I think totally have merit. I think I brought most of them up, and I think that they are absolutely justified. I think that I've convinced myself around all of those concerns. So I don't think that. I think the benefits are, like, if I did a swap on this, the benefits are going to outweigh the negatives to it. I'm a software developer, so I'm used to just a world of constant change. But so to me, I think that's what's going on there. Is they're afraid of, like, mod authors are effectively their meal ticket. Like, they rely on premium subscriptions, which come from people wanting to get higher speed downloads and avoid ads, and from those ads themselves. So, like, if they basically don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, whereas you are decoupled from that. You have no, it doesn't matter. It won't impact you if people are upset with the means of delivery.
Yeah, and that's something I guess I would ask mod authors as well, or to consider, is that the alternative. So let's say the Nexus does something that everybody hates, right? I don't know. Everybody says, you know what, screw the Nexus. We're gonna take our mods and go somewhere else. You have a place right now where there's actually a group that enforces your rights, if you will. I don't know if you can call them rights, viewpoints on how mods should be distributed. The problem I would see, or what I wouldn't want to see, because it'd be more work for me, even though in the end it would be simpler in some ways, is that the community would fracture, right? Everybody's going to go and they're going to make their own Patreon, and they're going to host their mods on a Patreon site. And not only is that going to be a horrific experience for the end users, because now they got to get all these logins to different places, or they start hosting them on their own files. I mean, ENB, SKSE, these all have their own websites. What happens in that case is there is no rights management.
Right.
Like, at that point, you're going to have people like Wabbajack writing screen scrapers for everybody's website, and then it's over. Like there's no say anyone can have about re-uploading to a different site. I mean, you have DMCAs and stuff, but it just becomes the Wild West, a giant mess of just nothing, Right. And so that's where I kind of look at it. It's like, I wish the community could come together, and I think it can. I think and I want to view this positively. I do see the vast majority of people I talk to are either completely indifferent or excited about Wabbajack. And I mean, and you're in that place too of cautious, right? Cautious optimism. And a lot of people are just like, you know what? I don't really care. And it's a small number of people who are really been out of shape about it. And I wish it wasn't that way, but
yeah, I think, like I said, I get where they're coming from. I've gone over it. I've gone over the potential issues. I'm fully on board with something like Wabbajack existing. I think so far, like I said, the Nexus seems very, very cautious about their potential version of this, and I understand exactly why. And that's why I think Wabbajack is in a unique position to kind of run with this and lead the way. So I'm very hopeful that you are successful, and I want to see you succeed, and I want to see your move in social media succeed, and you to have a lot of community presence. Because if so, then I would like to invest some of my time and resources into it, because it solves. Because I have a unique. I mean, this is one of the reasons that I'm very supportive of this is that I've created kind of a game within a game that has its own sub-modding community, and so I've often thought about writing my own installer just for Sim Settlements players. Which you know we've seen with a few Skyrim mods like Enderall and I think what the other one was. But anyway, something like that, and you saved me the trouble of having to go do that. So it's a huge benefit to people who are doing large scale mods to have something like this in existence.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, this is an open discussion for people too, is that, you know, what I said earlier, I firmly believe in that. My end goal is to make installing a complicated mod list as close to a one-click installer as possible. And pretty much every other goal I have is secondary to that one. So if you can show me how, you know, we can give more recognition to authors, we can, you know, improve the amount of, you know, money or recognition the authors get, or how we can, you know, work with authors to make sure that those people trying to pirate or monetize their mods when they shouldn't can't do that, you know, make it harder on those situations. I'm all for that, as long as we can, you know, not negatively impact too much the users.
Yeah, I got an idea for you here, and
sure.
It should be possible. Is what if a random mod in the mod pack was shows their like front page screenshot, the author name and everything, and some details that that author gets to decide during the loading screen. Like you cover up the Skyrim or Fallout 4 screen that happens. You know, there's that brief time between when the game loads and they actually get to the start menu. There's you know.
Yeah, we've considered that one too, and I'm not against that. I think there is a interesting. I'm trying to think of what there were some technical issues, like that's not super moddable. It has to be an external process, type thing. But yeah, pop-up ads.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's time we're gonna have to wait anyway. Like, you know, there's always
exactly.
Even if you've got an SSD and all your INIs optimized, you're still gonna have to wait. There's gonna be 10 or 15 seconds where you could show them information about
even transition loading screens, right? As you're loading the game, it's like, you know, here's a blurb about this mod, and you know, that sort of thing I think is great, because that sort of thing actually helps with the problem of you just downloaded and installed 200 mods. Do you know how to eat when you're hungry? You know, you know, or I can't move. What's happening? Oh, you spawned as a vampire and you're in sunlight or whatever. You know,
and it could be one of those features that's disableable by the end user. So if it's bothering them, but most people would probably just be like, all right, that's cool. Like if you did something like that, like say for example, you came up with the tech to hijack the loading screen where we usually get those random tips in the game, and we're able to display. I would totally leave that enabled. I think that would be really cool, actually, to be able to see, you know, like if the load screen, it was like a custom load screen like the Fallout 4 ones, where it's got like a blurb in the corner and a 3D model, and it instead showed me a picture of a mod page and the information about that author. That would be so cool. I would love to see that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's something we should definitely consider. And yeah, it'd be easy if it's a simple toggle that people are like, you know what, this is ruining my immersion, man.
Right. And there would be some people like that, but I bet there's a lot of people, like you said, like a lot of people who have never modded before. I think they would say like, okay, that's a price of admission. So be it. And they shouldn't argue about it. And if they get really annoyed by it and they go spam your message, like, all right, well, there's a checkbox right on the main screen.
Yeah,
just go ahead, just uncheck that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and those are sort of situations, sort of suggestions that are fantastic. You know, and I'd love to see more stuff like that. And you know, what's funny is we already produced those slides. We show them during install. But yeah, install is a one and done type thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we could definitely just use that same information to drive slides. So
well, I think that you could argue that has the potential to give people even more exposure than they got, because it tends to be otherwise, like say for example, I download a mod through Vortex. I went to that page once. I hit the download. Now I never go to their page again, because I can update the mod from within Vortex. I don't have to go to your page again. So if every couple of weeks in gameplay terms, your mod came back up into my face with your name, that's more exposure that you wouldn't have gotten before. So I think that there's a potential there where you could create a situation where people are actually getting more exposure through Wabbajack. Obviously, it would take a lot of work to get something like that, but it's potential that's not there otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. And that sort of stuff isn't, I mean, it's not a lot of work. So yeah, that's something I'll write down.
We've started doing that. Well, I insisted on doing that before I even launched Sim Settlements. So I know you haven't played the mod, but the idea behind it was it started out as I want to take the building system in Fallout 4 and make it feel more like SimCity, where you're in charge of zoning out your settlement as opposed to laying down bricks and toilets. And so one of the things that I did was I made a API for the system so that people could inject their own designs for these buildings that would pop up on the zones. And one of the things I made sure to include was a way for the author of the building, the designer, to have their name show up in game so people could see who designed it. And
nice.
Their kudos. So I think that, like, I don't know how you would do that on a programmatic level to generate mods, but God, you probably learned a lot about their file format to maybe do something like that. But anything in game that could show, could give credit would also be another thing that something like Nexus or Vortex can't even come close to doing. So just more ideas out there. Like you clearly have got some programming chops. So I think anything you can do like that, you're now taking it from you're going beyond the scope of what's possible. So then it becomes from you being to those detractors for being a net negative to their perspective, you could become a net positive to them.
Yeah, and it gives encouragement to mod authors to have decent splash screens because come on, guys, some of those are. That was. Okay, so the funny story about that, when I first started coding the slideshow part of it, so during the install, we call it the slideshow of just mods that are going through, right? I coded it up, and the first time I ever loaded a mod, it was from the Skyrim mod called More Painful Horse Sounds or something like that. Like this.
What a name,
and you're right, and the splash screen is just a horse half embedded in the terrain. And so I took a screenshot of it and I'm like, look guys, I go through all this trouble to add this for these people. And the first mod I get is just a horse butt on my screen. That's all it is. Just the rear end of a horse, so yeah, there's going to be those fun moments of like, really, that was your splash screen? Right,
Yeah, there's some funny splash screens. Sometimes people are memeing, and it's like, all right, well, that went right over my head. I'm too old for that. Well, there was one other thing I was going to bring up. I've totally forgotten it by now, but I've already kept you for a couple hours, so I want to let you go. But thank you so much for putting this tool together. I hope that we can turn some heads on this as far as some of the people who are against it. I want to see this be the next big thing. I think you've got the software nailed. Now we've got to help the creators who are objectively opposed to this see the light, hopefully. And then I think this has the potential to just go massive. It could be all new experiences for us players. It could give players who haven't tried it yet a chance to get into modding. This is going to be the way I try and get some of my friends to actually play my mod, because most of them don't mod, which is really a sad state of like, they're like, oh, what are you still working on that mod thing? Like, come on.
It's so true. I mean, that part of it is like, that's the thing for me. That's like, I'll tell people, I'll tell friends, I'll tell people, hey, I play Skyrim. You can't see it on the video, because we're not doing video. Behind me, there is a 4x4 foot painting of a dragon attacking a guy in ebony plate armor that a friend made. I mean, like I've been playing Skyrim for years, right? And it's one of those things where I tell people about that, or they see something in my office, they're like, oh wow, what's that? It's like, well, Skyrim. Oh, you still play that? Well, how do I do that? How do I play modded Skyrim?
Yeah,
and it's like, all right, well, you ready to lose all your free time for 2 weeks,
right.
and then still crash, because that's what you're gonna go for, Yeah. And so that sort of thing is that's what I want to change,
It's a noble goal. I think this has huge potential. I'm gonna do what I can from my side of things to help along the way. Like I said, I've been working. Well, I shouldn't take the credit for this. Sirlock has taken the go ahead on this and is working on getting kind of an official Sim Settlements mod list as a baseline. People could merge with other packs, and I want to make sure that our users have an easy way to go and install, and that's going to be through Wabbajack.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, man.
Absolutely. Great.